humble cottage on the edge of a deep forest lived a man with his 3 sons. The youngest son was called Simpleton, and he was often neglected and mocked by his brothers. One day, the eldest son decided to go into the forest to cut wood. His mother gave him a delicious pancake and a flask of wine. The eldest son set off into the forest, unaware of the encounter awaiting him. As he ventured deeper into the forest, a little old grey man appeared and greeted him. "Give me a bit of cake and a drink of your wine," the little man begged, "for I am so hungry and thirsty." But the eldest son refused, saying, "Give you my cake and my wine? I haven't got any. Be off with you." He left the little man standing there and began to fell a tree, but misfortune soon followed. The axe slipped and struck him in the arm, forcing him to return home, injured and ashamed. The next day, the second son decided to try his luck in the forest. He too met the little grey man, who asked him for a bit of cake and a drink of wine. But like his brother, the second son refused, thinking only of himself. As he chopped away at the tree, the axe struck his leg, and he too had to be carried home. Despite his brother's failures, the simpleton begged his father to let him try. His father finally agreed, though he did not expect much from his youngest son. The simpleton set off into the forest, carrying only a simple cake and sour beer. As he walked deeper into the forest, the little grey man appeared again, greeting the simpleton warmly. "I have only a flour and water cake and sour beer," said the simpleton, "but if that is good enough for you, let us sit and share." As they ate, the cake turned into a rich pancake, and the sour beer became fine wine. The little man smiled and said, "Because you have a kind heart, I will grant you good luck. Cut down that old tree, and you will find something special." The simpleton immediately set to work, cutting down the tree as the old man had instructed. To his amazement, there sat a goose with feathers of pure gold. The simpleton could hardly believe his eyes as he carefully lifted the goose from the ground. As night fell, he arrived at an inn where he decided to stay the night. The innkeeper's 3 daughters were instantly curious when they saw the golden goose. The eldest daughter thought, "I'll wait for my chance and pluck a golden feather for myself." But as soon as she touched the goose, her hand stuck fast, and she couldn't pull away. The second daughter, seeing her sister struggling, decided to try her luck. No sooner had she touched her sister than she was stuck fast as well. Despite her sister's warnings, the youngest daughter couldn't resist and touched them, becoming stuck herself. The next morning, the simpleton set off with the golden goose, unaware of the 3 daughters trailing behind him. The townspeople laughed and pointed as the simpleton walked through the village with his unusual procession. A parson, seeing the commotion, rushed out of the church to see what was happening. But when he touched the youngest daughter, he too became stuck fast and had to follow along. A clerk, seeing the strange parade, decided to join, only to find himself stuck to the parson. Soon, a farmer and a blacksmith joined the line, each becoming stuck in turn. Eventually, the simpleton reached a kingdom, still unaware of the curious line of people trailing behind. In this kingdom lived a princess who had never laughed, and her sadness worried the king greatly. But when the princess saw the ridiculous procession, her curiosity was piqued. For the first time in her life, the princess felt the corners of her mouth twitch into a smile. And then, she laughed a sound so joyful that it lifted the hearts of all who heard it. The king was overjoyed to hear his daughter laugh and immediately summoned the simpleton. As the simpleton was brought before the king, the strange spell was broken, and the people behind him were freed. The king thanked the simpleton for bringing laughter to the kingdom and offered him a reward. But the princess, still smiling, asked the simpleton to stay with her in the palace. The simpleton, who had never dreamed of such an honor, was surprised but gladly accepted. That evening, a lavish feast was held in the simpleton's honor, and he was seated beside the princess. His brothers, who had mocked him, watched in envy as their younger brother dined with royalty. The king, seeing the simpleton's good heart, offered him a place in his court. But the simpleton, humble and kind, asked only to return to his family with the golden goose. The princess, not wanting to lose her new friend, asked if she could join him. The king, seeing his daughter's happiness, gave his blessing for her to accompany the simpleton. And so, the simpleton and the princess set off for his humble cottage, the golden goose walking beside them. When they arrived, The simpleton's parents welcomed them with open arms, overjoyed to see their son return with a princess. The simpleton's brothers, seeing their error, hung their heads in shame, regretting how they had treated him. The golden goose, sensing the love in the family, shook its feathers, and golden plumes drifted down as a gift. With the golden feathers, the simpleton's family was never poor again, and they lived happily together. The simpleton, who had always been kind-hearted, forgave his brothers and taught them the value of generosity. As time passed, the bond between the simpleton and the princess grew stronger, built on laughter and kindness. The king often visited the simpleton's cottage, pleased to see his daughter so happy. One day, the king announced that the simpleton and the princess were to be married. The cottage was filled with excitement as preparations for the wedding began. On the day of the wedding, the simpleton and the princess stood together in a beautiful forest clearing. And so, the simpleton and the princess lived happily ever after, with the golden goose always by their side.